At one point in his NASCAR career, Erik Darnell was a promising development driver for Roush Fenway Racing and could have even been considered a Cup Series prospect. He had a few wins under his belt and seemingly had good sponsorship backing, but before he turned 30, he was out of NASCAR entirely. So today, let's take a look back at Erik Darnell's NASCAR career to find out what went wrong and answer whether or not he was really that bad of a driver. Starting out, Darnell found success in the Midwest Super Late Model scene, where he racked up multiple wins and won the 2003 Wisconsin Challenge Series championship. Because of his outstanding performance there, the next year in 2004, he was given the opportunity to make his NASCAR Truck Series debut at his home track of Milwaukee. Driving for the young MRD Motorsports team, Darnell had a pretty humbling experience, to be quite honest, as he qualified dead last and struggled all day to come home in 26th. But after competing full-time in the NASCAR Southeast Series and racing most of the Midwest Series schedule, Darnell's season turned out to be a good one overall, as he scored one win in each series and ranked third in the Southeast Series points. Over that off-season, Erik received his biggest opportunity yet, to become a part of the Roush Racing Development Program. Starting off in 2005, he would run 6 ARCA events for the Roush Alliance team Morallo Brothers Racing, and in his ARCA debut at Milwaukee, he proved that Roush made the right decision, qualifying in second and running up front the whole race to finish in 4th. Darnell put together another top 5 finish in his next race out at Gateway, and was looking to do so again at Nashville, as he was running 4th on the final lap, but unfortunately an idiotic bonsai move by Johnny Leonard sent both drivers into the wall. Luckily, Darnell still wound up finishing in 8th because so many drivers were off the lead lap, but that incident marked the start of a pretty big downward spiral. In his final 3 ARCA races that season, Darnell didn't score a single top 10 finish, with the best of 13th coming at Talladega. It wasn't all his fault, as he'd cracked the top 5 at Chicagoland prior to electrical problems, but nevertheless, it was a pretty disappointing way to end his year after starting off so hot. Outside of ARCA, Darnell also made a few starts in the Southeast Series and a handful in the Midwest Series, where he picked up the win at Lake Geneva. So, clearly continuing to show potential, Erik remained with Roush going into 2006, and this time not just as a part-time development driver, but as a full-time Roush Racing Truck Series driver. As he was the team's only full-time driver that year, it was evident that Roush had faith in him, and they were even willing to foot the bill in multiple races when there was no outside sponsorship. At first, Erik's results were a bit lackluster, as would be expected of a rookie, and at around the halfway point of the season, his best run was a P6 from Daytona. He had a few other top 10 finishes, but in the 14th round at Memphis Motorsports Park, he truly challenged for the win. There, after qualifying in 4th place and running up front for most of the night, Darnell took the lead from Dennis Setzer in lap 177, right as the yellow flag flew for debris. Then on the restart, he made easy work of the 10 of Terry Cook, who had stayed out under the caution, and was once again seated in 1st place with under 10 laps to go. But over the course of that short green flag run, the 60 of Jack Sprague, who had won the pole and led over 100 laps earlier in the race, was quickly closing in, and in lap 193, he got by Darnell to take back the top spot. The final caution came out just a few laps later, which gave Darnell another shot, but ultimately, Sprague powered away on the restart and didn't look back, picking up his first win of the season and the first ever win for his young Weiler Racing team. Though he came up just short of his first career win, Erik Darnell was in the mix all night long, and he made his name known as a true contender in Memphis. And from that point on, he finished inside the top 20 in every remaining race that year, proving not only to be a consistent driver, but one that could also take good care of his equipment. He also challenged for another win later in the season at Atlanta. After finishing a strong 8th place there back at the spring, Darnell once again showed speed at the mile-and-a-half track, and this time enough to take the lead with 16 laps to go. It looked like he was beginning to pull away from the tightly clustered front pack, but after only a few laps in the clean air, the caution came out when the 75 of Eric Almirola caught fire. In the 10-lap shootout to the finish, unfortunately Darnell was not able to fend off the hard-charging 16 of Mike Bliss and dropped back across the line in a respectable but bittersweet 3rd place. In fact, by the end of this season, Erik had gotten pretty accustomed to finishing there, as he also finished 3rd in the race prior in Martinsville and in the finale at Homestead. Overall, with a 12th place points finish and Rookie of the Year honors, his rookie campaign was not a bad one by any means. And while he came up winless, he did net 4 top 5s, 12 top 10s, and the pole at Nashville. He performed a bit better on paper than his teammate David Reagan, who ran the majority of the schedule, but in comparison to Roush's other primary part-time driver Mark Martin, his results were a bit less flattering. That year, in just 14 starts, Martin left no doubts that Roush equipment was capable of winning, as he took his number 6 machine to victory lane 6 times. So come 2007, Darnell was re-signed, but it was also apparent that he would need to get a win of his own, if not multiple, if he wanted to keep his good standing with Roush. 4 races into that season, he had yet to do so, or do much of anything for that matter. His best finish was a P12 from Daytona, and heading into the Kansas weekend, Roush elected to put him in their ARCA car to gain experience. In that race, Darnell once again came up just short of the win, as while leading with 4 laps to go, he got passed by the 4 of Scott Lagasse Jr. and had to settle for a runner-up finish. But ironically, the next day in the Truck Series race, it was a whole different story. Starting from 10th, Darnell slowly crept up to the front as the race went on, and on lap 72, he caught a lucky caution. Having just completed his green flag pit stop, he was scored in 16th place as the last truck on the lead lap when the yellow flag came out, and by staying out under the caution, he advanced to 2nd place on the restart. After the race went back green, Darnell spent a few laps behind Jack Sprague, but on lap 82, he soared past to the outside and was unmatched for the rest of the day. Coming to the finish line on the final lap, he had pulled out to over a 10-second lead over 2nd place and scored his first career win in dominant fashion. It seemed as if Darnell had put all the pieces together, and with a performance as strong as he had at Kansas, it would have been reasonable to think that he could at least win a few more races that season and potentially even contend for the championship. Everything was going right for him. He was driving top-caliber equipment, he had just whooped the field, and he even had stable sponsorship from Northern Tool and Equipment. After sponsoring him for a handful of races towards the end of the 2006 season, Northern came back on board to sponsor the 99 truck full-time in 2007, but sponsor or no sponsor, nothing was able to help Darnell's inconsistency and general bad luck throughout the remainder of his season. Be it due to others directly wrecking him like the next week at Charlotte, or just mediocre performance, Darnell didn't score his second top 10 finish until the 11th race at Milwaukee, and by then had already fallen down to 13th in points. As there were no playoffs back then, his win was simply that, and he would need to pick up the pace considerably to even end the year with a respectable points finish. Following his solid P6 at Milwaukee, he did turn his season back around for a while, recording multiple top 10s and an impressive 2nd place in New Hampshire. At Las Vegas, he brought home his 3rd top 5 of the year with a P5, and he'd climbed back up to 8th in points. But with only 6 races left on the schedule, Darnell was about to enter the roughest stretch of his career. Although most of his bad finishes weren't his fault, Darnell ended the year without a single other top 10 finish and 3 crash-related DNFs in those last 6 races. His best run during that stretch was a P14 at Texas, where he failed to finish after falling casualty to a massive restart crash in the final laps. And after putting a cap on his sophomore truck season with a miserable P24 at Homestead, he sunk back to finish 12th in points, the same rank as in his rookie season. But while his first 2 seasons ended with the same points finish, his rookie season was better on paper in every category but the wins column. With 1 fewer top 5, 4 fewer top 10s, and a drop in average finish from 13.6 to 17.2, he had clearly regressed in results, but nevertheless, with Northern Tool and Equipment remaining loyal as a sponsor, and with most of his poor results being due to circumstances outside of his control, Roush Racing decided to bring Darnell back on for the 2008 season. Additionally, after his 2nd place ARCA run back in the spring Kansas race, Darnell brought Roush to victory lane in both of his other ARCA starts in 2007, so coupling that with his first truck win, it was evident that he still had potential. In the 2008 season opener at Daytona, that potential showed up immediately, and after winning the pole, Erik led 45 laps over the course of the day, and after a late round of green flag pit stops, he was positioned in 2nd place, right behind Todd Bodine in a 3-truck breakaway. But unfortunately, with 14 laps to go, Darnell began to feel a bad vibration and was forced to give up his shot at the win to come down pit road. Then while slowing down, the rookie driver Justin Marks behind him didn't realize he was pitting and kept on the gas, sending Darnell hard up the track and into the outside wall. So after a great day on the high banks and a great shot to win up until his crash, he left the track dejected and with yet another bad finish. The races that followed saw mixed results for the 99 team as they picked up top 5s at Martinsville and Charlotte, but finished outside the top 20 at Kansas and Dover due to getting taken out. Then after losing multiple laps at Texas because of a vibration, Darnell entered the 10th race at Michigan, once conceded 12th in points, and still in need of proving himself. While he performed well at Daytona and even led 23 laps at Charlotte, Darnell was now in the midst of his 3rd full-time season with Roush, and honestly, hadn't shown much improvement thus far. At Michigan, he qualified in 11th, but quickly worked his way up to the top 5 and settled into 3rd place by just lap 18. His truck had clear speed from the drop of the green flag, and with less than 30 laps to go, he began a challenge for the lead. Pit strategy was also on his side, as his team was one of only a few to put on 4 tires during the most recent caution. Most teams had put on tires during another caution less than 10 laps before, so they opted for none or just right sides, but as it turned out, the race stayed green long enough afterwards that Darnell and the other drivers on his strategy were able to work their way back up to the front of the pack. The fastest of them was Darnell, and with 25 laps to go, he got a good run on the leader Ron Hornaday Jr. and surged past on the outside. Hornaday quickly fell back as his older tires couldn't keep pace, but still falling close behind Darnell were Johnny Benson Jr. and Scott Speed. Both of them had led laps earlier in the day, and with fresh tires of their own, they could steal the lead away in a second if Darnell slipped up. After multiple laps of near-perfect driving, it was still Darnell leading with 7 to go, but when the 15 of Mark Mitchell, who was having a career-best run in 4th place, cut a tire and got into the wall, the yellow flag came out and would put a lot of other drivers back in contention. On the restart, Darnell got a great jump on 2nd place Scott Speed and began to pull away with just 3 laps to go. But soon, he began to feel the pressure again as closing in fast was the 23 of Johnny Benson, who coming to the white flag was nearly within striking distance.
2 truck length lead over Johnny Benson. He's taken over 2nd.
Benson's gaining on him. Ty Bodine makes another move on the inside of the 6 truck.
Final lap, inside of 2 miles to go. We're riding along with Colin Brown.
Oh, we got a spin.
Problems in turn number 1.
No
Sliding
caution.
Is Ron Hornaday.
No caution. These guys are racing back. No caution.
Ron Hornaday off the racetrack. The field gets through 1 and 2. They stay green. Erik Darnell tries to hold off Johnny Benson. Here he comes looking to the bottom of the racetrack.
Johnny goes right down to the bottom.
What a great job by Erik Darnell. Here comes Ty Bodine.
Johnny Benson looking to the inside. It's door to door as they come to the start-finish line. Johnny Benson trying to get it. He's going to go across the start-finish line. They were almost identical across the start-finish line. We still haven't seen as they have updated the scores.
We couldn't tell. We're right on the start-finish line, and we could not tell who won the race.
They're going to have to go to the camera. They're saying it was that close to find out who won this race. Johnny Benson and Erik Darnell were side by side when they went across the start-finish line.
Let's see what we have on our camera right here. Here comes Johnny Benson. He's on the inside right against the gravel.
And Johnny Benson right now has the edge.
But not for long. Here comes Darnell with the momentum on the high side, getting that side draft to the line.
Closing in on the start-finish line.
Erik Darnell.
Almost a dead heat.
I think it's Erik Darnell by
I don't
inches.
know if Johnny Benson might not get the nod here. This right here may be the closest finish ever in the history of the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series.
Thanks a lot, guys. You guys are awesome. Good job.
They're claiming Erik Darnell gets the win. It's win number 2 for Darnell.
At the line, it was Darnell by 5 1/1000ths of a second over Benson, which at the time was the 2nd closest finish in Truck Series history. It was far too close for comfort for Darnell and his onlooking team, but it was just as much of a win as any other. And for Darnell, it was a much-needed one after his very up-and-down 2007 season and mediocre start in 2008. But the question remained, could he build off his win this go-around and contend for the title, or was it just another flash-in-the-pan moment to be followed by major inconsistency? The next week in Milwaukee, he did build off his momentum big time, leading 32 laps towards the middle of the race and bringing home a solid 4th-place finish. Then 1 week later in Memphis, he didn't lead any laps, but ran up front all night long and finished 2nd to Ron Hornaday. The rest of Darnell's season wasn't perfect by any means, and he didn't even win any more races, but he clearly took a step forward as a driver, from an inconsistent one to a regular contender. At Nashville and Las Vegas, he led 29 and 56 laps respectively and route to 2nd place finishes, but both were bittersweet as he was passed for the win late in the race. At Nashville, it was a rematch of the Michigan race between Darnell and Johnny Benson, but this time, without any late caution, Benson just got a right onto the inside and set sail to the finish. Then at Las Vegas, after a total caution fest, Darnell was able to survive all of the late restarts except for the last, as the 5 of Mike Skinner found a way around him to the outside and took away the top spot. Coming to the line on the final lap, Darnell managed to build up a big run, but unfortunately it was not his night and he was edged out by just half a truck length. So while he was close to scoring a few more wins that season and ultimately finished 4th in points without ever having a realistic shot at the championship, Erik Darnell put together his best season by far with the 1 win, 9 top 5s, and 12 top 10s, along with an average finish of 11.3. At this point, Roush had to decide what was next for the promising Truck Series driver, as he had already completed 3 full seasons in the Truck Series and had shown enough promise in 2008 that he was definitely worthy of a shot in the Nationwide Series. But on the other hand, he could just as well return to the Truck Series and compete for the championship. However, that decision was more or less forced on both the team and driver, as due to the economic crisis of the time, Ford opted to cut their funding to the Truck Series, and that, combined with a further lack of sponsorship, caused Roush to close down 2 of their 3 Truck Series teams. And with no full-time Nationwide seats available either, Darnell settled for a part-time Nationwide schedule in the Roush No. 6 car, which he would split with David Reagan. It was a good opportunity nonetheless for Darnell to continue proving himself behind the wheel of winning equipment, and in his first few starts he did just that, scoring a very impressive 4th place finish at Darlington after running up front all race long, and another 4th place finish in Milwaukee after winning the pole and leading 19 laps. In his first 7 races, he performed far better than he could have been expected to, as his worst result out of all of them was a P12 at Richmond, not to mention that he was competing against multiple veteran Cup drivers in every race. At that rate, he could have been competing for wins by the end of this season, but that's not exactly what happened, as after scoring 2 top 5s and 5 top 10s across his first 7 races, he ended the season with, well, those exact same numbers. It was unfortunately the worst fall-off Darnell had endured yet. Some of it wasn't his fault at all. For example, at Iowa, he was battling inside the top 5 all race before a boneheaded 4-wide move by Justin Allgaier ended up costing him a shot at any decent finish. Then at Charlotte, he was also in and around the top 5 before Jason Leffler got loose underneath him and took him out. But as for the rest of the misfortune and mediocre performance in Darnell's 16 total starts that year, he was, at least from an outside perspective, the main problem. And even worse for his case, David Reagan won 2 races in that exact same car and held a far superior average finish of 10.6 compared to Darnell's 16.8. But despite his active fall-off in the second half of that season, Darnell was still hired by the Hall of Fame Racing / Yates Racing No. 96 team to make his Cup Series debut. This move drummed up a bit of controversy as Darnell, who was pretty inexperienced for Cup standards, was taking the seat away from the year 2000 champion and the team's planned full-time driver Bobby Labonte purely due to the sponsorship he brought with him. Anyway, in the 7 starts he made towards the end of that season, Darnell was involved in a few incidents, but he finished every time under power. His best finish was a P29 at Kansas, but compared to Labonte, who finished 5th at Las Vegas and ran consistently in the mid-20s, it was nothing to write home about. Apparently, Darnell's sponsors, which got him the ride, didn't think so either, as come 2010, Northern Tool and Equipment would not return to sponsor him whatsoever. And with no other significant sponsors behind him, Erik Darnell was left on the sideline nearly all year long. Finally, near the end of the 2010 season, Roush signed him onto a 3-race deal in their number 16 car, but having been out of the car for nearly a year at that point, Darnell was not able to make much of the opportunity, only finishing a best of 14th at both Dover and Texas. In 2011, he was only able to throw together a few start and park races with Whitney Motorsports in the Cup Series and Key Motorsports in the Nationwide Series. But over the off-season, the latter developed into a full-time, full-distance deal for 2012. Despite bringing very minimal sponsorship, Key Motorsports, which rebranded to the Motorsports Group that year, were able to fund Darnell's car by start and parking as many as 3 other cars each race. Although Darnell had basically been out of the sport for 2 years, he didn't do half bad for the underfunded team, bringing home a best of 14th place at Talladega and a handful of other solid top 20 runs, such as a P16 at Montreal. Additionally, he took great care of his equipment, as while he failed to finish 9 races, only 1 of them was due to a crash. But due to a continued lack of sponsorship, Darnell would not return to the team in 2013, or any team at all for that matter, as this time he'd be forced to exit NASCAR entirely. Or so he thought. In the following years, he competed in the local late model divisions around Wisconsin, even winning the 2013 Dick Trickle 99 at the La Crosse Fairgrounds Speedway. But it wasn't until 2021, nearly a decade since his last start, that he would return to NASCAR. In what was intended to be, and has remained as, a one-off race, Darnell announced out of nowhere that he would be competing in the Truck Series race at Darlington. Driving for Nice Motorsports, he even brought his old sponsor Northern Tool and Equipment back on board for the throwback-themed weekend. And in the race, he didn't do half bad, especially for being out of the seat for so long, as he came home 17th and on the lead lap. But now it is time to go back and finally answer the question of the video: was Erik Darnell really that bad of a driver in NASCAR? In this case, I'm going to say he was definitely not a bad driver. He had a very impressive truck season in 2008, and at that point, it was destined to compete for more wins and potentially a championship had he returned in 2009. Even in the Nationwide Series, he was a consistent top 15 to top 10 driver and ran the top 5 on occasion, so assuming he could have been more consistent with another year of experience there, he at the very least could have made a career in the lower series like a Justin Allgaier or Matt Crafton. But with the way things played out, the economic crisis at the time, and his lack of sponsorship once Northern left, Erik was basically a victim of circumstance and never got the opportunity he deserved. Still, he will remain as a 2-time Truck Series winner and 2-time ARCA winner, which are achievements far above what most drivers on the national stage will ever get. But that's all I've got for today, so if you did enjoy this video, please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more videos just like these. Thank you as well for your support of the 2 most recent Worthy That Bad episodes of Rico Abra and Justin Marks, as both of those got over 10,000 views, which is quite a lot for my channel. So also welcome to any new viewers that came from those videos. We're already getting fairly close to 2,000 subs as well, which is pretty crazy considering that I only started this channel a little over a year ago now and pretty much had no idea what I was doing back then at all, and not that I really do now either. Anyway, I'll try to keep the weekly uploads going as long as I can, so stay tuned for more episodes of this series and whatever other things I come up with along the way. But yeah, that's all for this video, so until next time, peace out.